Lewis Hamilton is poised to make a legendary switch from Mercedes to Ferrari, and while it was rumoured that some very important members from the Silver Arrows would follow him to Maranello, that doesn't seem to be the case right now, with the most important man, the right hand of Hamilton, and the infamous It's Hammer Time announcer Peter Bonnington, now reluctant to follow in the footsteps of the 7-time world champion. Could we see a similar success from Antonelli and Bono now that they've worked during Kimi's Spa testing? And if so, will Hamilton suffer from the lack of presence from Bonnington in Ferrari? One of the greatest moves in the Formula One world has been completed by Lewis Hamilton, who joined Ferrari on a multi-year deal and started an avalanche of comments, primarily revolving around who would follow in his footsteps to the Maranello team. Back at that time, it was believed that Mercedes was prepared for the downfall and Ferrari had the secret ingredient for the new regulations from 2026 onwards, which was further fueled by the prior joining of Loic Serra, who was also part of Mercedes' current technical staff. Be that as it may, the situation has changed drastically in terms of 2024's mid-season development, but that doesn't take away the fact that Hamilton's journey with Mercedes was far too long and successful for him to not leave any dent in their hopes of returning back to their glory path. The 7-time world champion won 6 championships with Mercedes, and with 2 wins this season with the Silver Arrows, he is proving that when the willpower is there, anything is possible. But under anything, we also mean the technical staff that's working tirelessly behind the closed curtains, as well as the shot callers that are known as the race engineers. And it's safe to say that the partnership that Bono and Hamilton has had from 2014 onwards is something that's very hard to be broken. This has been proven after Hamilton's win in Silverstone, when Bono was very emotional on the podium, but also during Canada, when Bono knew that Hamilton was done dirty by the tactics of the team and his voice on the radio said it all. When talking about the experience that Hamilton had with Mercedes, mostly involving Bono and the relationship they've had all throughout these winning years, Hamilton said, "I couldn't be prouder of the people that I work with in this team. I couldn't be more grateful to Mercedes. They've changed my life. They supported me at 13 years of age, and they've given me the chance to be an F1 driver for them and put their faith behind me for all these years." Even though Hamilton shares a specific bond with everyone in Mercedes, which has been proven by him visiting the factory quite often throughout their troublesome years in 2022 and 2023, and serving as a guinea pig for most of this time, no relationship compares to the one with Bono, which is why many believe that this duo would be revived in Ferrari. How many times have we heard Hamilton crying on the radio and saying, "I love you, Bono," after a race win that was the first one after the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix? I don't think it happened at all, and to think that this duo would be broken apart from 2025 onwards is definitely a heartbreak for all of the F1 fans. But it's a realistic scenario that awaits us after Peter Bonnington has reportedly informed Mercedes that he is here to stay and work with Hamilton's successor, likely to be Antonelli. And while this information would be hardly accepted by Hamilton, who tried until the very last moment to pursue Bonnington to Ferrari, the show must go on, and so must the personnel with it. Bonnington is, after all, an employee with Mercedes, and that means he has obligations within the team. So even if he followed Hamilton to Maranello, the first year in which the duo could have been reunited was 2026 due to the gardening leave that Bono would have to serve with Mercedes in 2025. That means 1 full year of being unemployed, but taking money from the team. And in the meantime, anything can happen between Hamilton and his new racing engineer, who is also an employee of Ferrari. Therefore, a lot of sides would have to be involved for this duo to be reunited, which is now an impossible mission for both Hamilton and Bono. This puts us in a scenario in which Bono would work with Kimi Antonelli, who is likely to be announced as Hamilton's successor from 2025 onwards as early as in Imola, in what would be his home race, and a small ceremony is expected between him and Hamilton. Kimi Antonelli has done many tests for Mercedes in the past couple of months, and the most important one was probably in Spa, where he worked directly with Bono. Both of them were pictured having a chat, and of course Mercedes has asked Peter what he thinks of Kimi and his driving talent. To this, Bonnington had nothing but praise for the young Italian driver, and considering the fact that even if he wanted to work with Hamilton in 2025, it's an impossible mission due to his contractual obligations with Mercedes, a new duo is likely to form in the next season, Antonelli and Bono. Of course, this will come as a very big disappointment for Hamilton, who has pulled a large number of engineers to join him in Ferrari, which is a process that's been further helped by the arrival of Serra before the 7-time world champion made this bombshell decision. But it's something that he has to live by for the remainder of his career. Another piece of news that's helping this scenario become a reality is the fact that Hamilton had talks with Vettel about the race engineer that he's going to inherit from Sainz, Riccardo Adami, who was also Sebastian's engineer during his 6-year tenure with the Maranello team. Of course, when it comes to Ferrari's race engineer, as well as the strategy team, there are always big question marks, such as the ones in Silverstone and Monaco in 2022, when Sainz had to make his own strategy because of the poor calls that were given to him on the radio. But with these calls ultimately coming from another department, most of the time the race engineer is just the messenger, even though he's also obliged to give his input as to how his driver would react to the call and whether or not there's a better solution for his race at that moment. Adami would be put under massive pressure to deliver performance for a driver like Hamilton. But given the fact that he's worked with Vettel, we should expect nothing less than perfection from this newly formed duo. Until then, Bono and Hamilton have 10 more races that they could win, and while the Drivers' Championship is beyond reach due to the massive deficit that Mercedes had at the beginning of the season, it doesn't mean that they will just give up like that. The constructors are still up for grabs, and Mercedes won't give McLaren and Red Bull an easy time in this regard. After all, the W15 has turned out to be one of the most all-round competitive cars from Canada onwards, as they've won 3 out of the last 4 races and have had at least one driver on the podium from Montreal Grand Prix onwards. This puts the team in great momentum for 2025 as well, with Russell expecting the competition to be ramped up, and with Horner stating that the next 18 months of racing will be exactly as we've seen in the last 8, due to the fact that Red Bull have dropped the ball with the performance of the RB20. McLaren continued with their questionable strategy calls, and Mercedes seems to be the only team to have all figured it out, except for Russell's gamble on Spa that left him without any points. When talking about 2025 in general, Russell said, "I think for all of us it's been a difficult couple of years getting the car into a place where we can consistently fight for victories. But I'm so motivated, so excited for the second half of the season, which is ultimately building up towards 2025. And when you look at the competition now, there's no reason why we can't fight." Of course, Antonelli arriving to Mercedes would mean bad news for Russell, because he's not here to listen to any orders, and we're likely going to see some fierce battles between him and the Brit once the W16 turns out to be a competitive machinery. This is something that Mercedes have dodged in 2024 because of Hamilton's departure. But there's no guarantee that sparks won't fly between both of the Brits in the last 10 races, because the last thing that the 7-time world champion would want at this point is to leave on a losing note. As for Bono, it would be very interesting to see how he and Antonelli would blend in the new mix, as well as how Hamilton's departure would affect him, because the relationship between a driver and his race engineer is more than just exchanging information. It's about hearing a familiar voice, recognizing the danger in it, as well as understanding the criticality of the information that's arriving in your ear. With all of this in mind, do you think that Bono made a smart decision to stay with Mercedes and their prospect of Antonelli from 2025 onwards? And more importantly, do you think that Hamilton can replicate half of the success he's had with Bono with his new engineer Adami? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.